Dean Gordonitis, Unleash This Book Reviews, bringing you a new book review every Saturday, sometimes Sunday. Except this week, doing something new. Gonna try some poetry out on you. So tell me what you think about that. Got this book, The Misbeliever, from one of you guys, a viewer, Paul Diffenderfer. This collection of poetry really knocked me out, and that's why I think it's deserving of getting a review on a channel where I normally review more classic literature type stuff. I want to look into the packaging and the overall presentation of the physical copy of the work. Because normally when I'm reading this older fiction, it doesn't really make much sense to look into that because there's multiple pressings, multiple prints with different types of fonts used, layouts on the page, different cover illustrations, overall structure differences between each copy. It wouldn't really make sense to focus on one of those and tell you what I thought about it. But seeing as how this collection has been published very recently and there's only one format of it, I thought it would take maybe a minute to tell you how cool it is. The structure, it comes in like about the size of a CD if you were to purchase, a normal plastic jewel case. It's about the diameter of the book. And it's hardcover, red with black ink, looks nice. Open it up, the pages are nice and thick, not too thick, just perfect. I love it. The font used, the layout on the page, it's all elegantly done, and it's just, if you didn't even read it, I would tell you that I was pretty impressed just on the way that it looked. As I digged in deeper, I started reading into the poetry. Now, what's cool about this collection is Diffenderfer took the poetry and brought along a friend, a photographer, to take a picture that correlated to the poem. And every page is laid out that you have the photo on the left side and the poem on the right side. Now, I'll say that I'm not the best when it comes to reading poetry. A lot of times I have trouble figuring out how to decipher it appropriately, if the author's looking for me to decipher it at all, if I'm supposed to just let it wash over. I struggle with that. But in this case, as I was reading along, I took a few approaches at it. And first I read it quickly and sort of just let everything wash over me, get that general feel of it. Then I read it again, and what I did was, for each page of poetry, I read it at about the pace it would take me to read that page if it was filled with prose. In essence, what this came down to was about the length of time I would spend reading a sentence of literature I would spend per word on a poem. And I found that this helped me to slow down and soak in what the poet was trying to say. I think Bukowski, who's one of the greatest poets among kids my age, at least in their eyes, is such a hit because it doesn't take much to dig into him and decipher what he's trying to say. What you see on the page is more or less what you get. But with most other poetry, that's not the case. You kind of have to let each word sink in because each word was chosen with a lot of care, a lot more care than literature is, because literature focuses more on the sentence and the paragraph than the specific word. After reading it this way, I felt that I got a stronger grip of what I was reading, and the photography just really matched well. It really connected with the same emotions I felt as I was reading it, and it also kind of helped as a pointer tip as to how to read the poem and what type of vibe I should be getting from it. So those few poems where I did struggle interpreting, the picture helped illustrate and better understand what I was going for. I'd also like to point out that if you're brand new to poetry, and I'm not much further than you, don't be afraid to just let it wash over you. If you're not understanding what you're reading and you pick up the pace and you just get that general feel afterwards, that's a great starting point. And you can usually base off that general feel if you want to read it again. Here come the trains. If you read it over once and you don't really remember anything specific except maybe a feeling or an emotion, that usually will tell you if you want to try again. And unlike a book where maybe you read it once and you put it down for a year or two before you read it again, poetry is pretty cool because you can read it over and over and over again in a very short time frame and soak up more and more each time because there's so much packed into one word. Now, in Diffenderfer's work here, The Misbeliever, he looks at some of the deepest pains and struggles, emotions, concepts, philosophical thoughts that we have. This is not light reading. It's very deep for those of us who kind of struggle with the purpose of life. Now, obviously, I think we all kind of struggle with the purpose of life, but we all want to find answers a little bit more than other people. And I wouldn't recommend this to the general audience because a lot of people don't struggle on a day-to-day basis trying to find a purpose. I think this collection of poetry is for those of us who focus a majority of our time wondering what we're doing, why we're doing it, and if we should continue doing it. Diffenderfer structures this a lot around nature and sort of cylindrical, circular patterns. You know, obviously you have stuff like the seasons and things like that that help to greatly represent life and death in our own times. Spring and winter are brought up a lot in this poetry. A lot more of nature is seen here. The whispering of winds, wind and it being the language of nature is a reoccurring theme here. Also, waves of the ocean are brought up a lot, and the overall structure of life's ability to bring a living creature out of dust and dirt and bring it back down to that dust and dirt until it eventually turns into rock. Now, what's cool about this poem is it kind of goes with the ups and downs and the vibes that you get in your life as you live it day to day. There's the high points where you are, say, in a field or in a park, and for whatever reason your life just slows down and you can soak in everything around you and you feel that bliss. I'm pretty sure most of you understand what I mean with that. There's poems here that are appropriate to that feeling. There's other poems here that approach that feeling of despair you get when you stay up too late at night by yourself, no friends around, neighbors are sleeping, 2 or 3 in the morning, and you start to wonder what you're doing and why you're doing it. But then there's other poems, same poems that attack it in the second half that explain that feeling of relief or that rush you get when you wake up for the next day and suddenly that despair has transformed and you've changed back into the soldier who pushes forward regardless of what life has for you. You know that even if you don't have a purpose in this life, to keep trying anyways. And perhaps that's the purpose in and of itself. I think the general feeling that Diffenderfer is trying to get across to us is one of resignation, acceptance, and peace. And the quicker we are able to grasp those emotions, the sooner we will be able to fully understand why we're here at all. Or maybe understanding comes in the fact that we can't understand it. But the feeling that I get is a meditative one. And I think that's what is really cool about this book, in that it also comes in a variety of formats to help you reach this point. So for those of us that have popcorn brain from reading too much Twitter feeds and being online too often and are unable to focus on words and read the poetry slowly, Diffenderfer here is also included an audio CD and a DVD reading of 2 friends reading the poetry to some brilliant flamenco jazz music. If you can't focus on the written word reading the book, try putting on some headphones and closing your eyes and listening to this poetry being read over some really great musicianship. Or pop it in your DVD player if you're more of a visual kind of guy and watch them read and play this poetry and music for a half hour. That's about all it takes to get this experience in. And around the 15-minute mark, you really start to come to terms with yourself. You know, you start to focus on your breathing and all that kind of stuff that meditation really tries to get at you, but sometimes it's hard to do. I think the Misbeliever really helps with that. So when you're reading this stuff, or you're listening to it, or you're watching it, if you don't understand word by word or sentence by sentence or poem by poem, I think that's okay, because I think the general message that the Misbeliever is bringing to us is the entire package. That feeling of calmness, that feeling of being okay with the unknown. It comes on to you whether you understand what you're reading or not. If you take the time, you get that feeling, and I think it's rewarding, and I want to pass it on to you if you're up for the challenge. I'm not recommending this to you if you're not a poetry type of person. I think you have to be a poetry type of person, and you have to be a really avid poetry type of person. If you think, you're somebody who reads poetry a lot, I definitely recommend this. Look it up on Amazon. It's all over. I'll hook you up with some links. check it out, all right? Cool. I'm really glad to bring this to you guys. Let me know what you think. Take a look at the website. Tell me what your opinions are. I'm excited. I hope this book goes places. I think it deserves it. Next week, Broom of the System, David Foster Wallace, bringing you more David Foster Wallace. Sorry. Then we got Ernest Hemingway, To Have and Have Not. That should be awesome. I'm still trying to get a copy of The Blood Meridian. Library is just shuffling me around. I also have a copy of Candide that I'm working on, so all sorts of projects. Keep an eye out. I'll see you guys next Saturday or Sunday. All right? See ya.